Week 4 of the Underground Book Club book study starts now, or actually, it started about 3 seconds ago. So glad you decided to tune in, whether you're with us live or tuning in to the video archive, which we actually send out to the email list in a few days. Glad that you're here. Got an interactive question for everyone to dive into, but we're going to give it to you right along with Mark, our amazing special guest. So I'll bring Mark on, and then I will share that we all get to start off with together. So, Mark. Woo!
Whoa!
Mark!
This is my first Facebook Live.
And Mark, you'll be pleased to know that was the smoothest entry anyone's ever made onto the show. So you could have told us you were a Jedi and we would have believed you.
Wow! Oh, but hey, you forgot to tell me what a setup this is. I had to worry about hair, makeup, wardrobe, lighting. I'm sitting on two pillows. My phone is balancing here because my earbuds plug into the bottom of my
Oh,
phone. Yeah.
yes.
So if anything moves,
It all
just
topples.
yeah,
I
I'll get
love
it
it.
back up.
So if it makes you feel any better, your hair is flawless. There's not a single hair out of place that I can see. So
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll also share. So when I do a lot of video work at school, it may come across on camera as looking somewhat decent, but I actually am balancing wicker baskets and then books and paper clips to hold the iPad and everything in place. It's not a pretty sight. So
Yes.
okay, so I'm
Great.
gonna introduce. I feel like Mark doesn't really need an introduction, but just in case you've been living under a rock for the last many years, this is my good friend and fellow principal colleague in Minnesota, Mark French. He's a Minnesota Principal of the Year, National Distinguished Principal, a great leader in our state organization. And here's above and beyond how he serves others. Here's the thing that I have always admired about Mark. He, to me personally, is a mentor and the epitome of an educator who's committed to lifelong learning. He is always learning. And I mean that just with great reverence. So, Mark, what do you have to say to all that?
Well, I appreciate that. And I know I'm going to be 60 years old next month, and I continue to learn. And it's
Yeah.
partly because of people like you, Brad, and other people I'm
Mm-hmm.
connected with and who continue to motivate me and inspire me in my 37th year as an educator and 22nd as a principal. So thank you for that.
Cool. Well, thanks for helping facilitate our learning here tonight. I got a question, and we jotted down some questions in case people kind of wonder how this works in advance that we want to talk about, and a lot of it we pull from the Underground Book Club hashtag and conversations from the book. But here's one I slipped in at the last second, Mark, and it's a spinoff from Shannon Edwards on hashtag Underground Book Club. And I thought it was such a good question that I want to ask you, but I also want to ask everyone listening on Facebook to kind of chime in on the comments because I have a feeling we can learn from one another on this. So the question, the thing that Shannon Edwards was talking about is in a fast-paced, multitasking, busy education world, sound familiar?
Yes.
How do you slow down and be fully present, whether you're at school or at home? So curious how, because you're very connected, Mark. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, you pointed out strategies that people can use to go off of autopilot. I think what you really have to do is just look the person in the eye, get down to their eye level, particularly if they're kids, and just have that dialogue and conversation back and forth. I'm too tempted sometimes that I got to check my phone. What time is it? Where do I need to be? Saying hi to somebody else who's walking by. But I think it's that eye to eye contact that you're giving that person your full attention.
Hmm. I'm going to make a prediction here that as other people kind of respond to that in the comments section, how do you slow down? How do you be fully present? As we go back and read, we'll probably all walk away better to serve and better to connect with others. Here's my thing. It's kind of a spin-off of what you just shared. Maybe 4 years ago or so, I don't know if I was talking to Jimmy Casas or if he just modeled it for me, but I remember a switch in my mind. I used to carry my cell phone a lot and have it out. even when people at school were talking to me, I thought I was kind of honoring them by not looking at it during the conversation, but I made a switch in my mind, partly maybe because now I notice when other people do this, but actually tucking it in my pocket so it doesn't feel like I'm even trying to get to it or check email or cross things off my list, just so it'd be like, it kind of be like talking to you right now. It's just us, right? But if I had my phone in my hand, even if I wasn't looking at it, I would assume that you would kind of notice, and that might possibly give the message that I had other things when we were done talking. I'm not sure, but that's kind of that's the thing that I've been working on the last few years, and it feels good. It helps me because when I have it in my hand, I think my brain intuitively says that's the next thing I need to do.
Right. And all of us can recall, even recently, being in a public place, particularly at a restaurant, where two people are dining together, but they are looking at their phones. And
Mhm.
I'm guilty of it too.
Yep.
I have to put my phone down because it is it going to be an email message, a Voxer message, a Twitter update or something, but just put it down and give that person your attention. And it raises a good question. When did multitasking become a positive attribute? You know, why?
Mhm.
Why should we be doing more things at the same time? I don't think we should. I think we
Mhm.
should and focus and attend and give the other person your attention.
Yeah, you alluded to autopilot, and that's actually straight from chapter 6 in the book. It's called Autopilot, and it does give 6 strategies. But just thinking about the times, I think probably busyness is becoming more and more routine, and it's commonplace. If I see people and teachers and principals who are busy, that's a very normal thing. The thing that sticks out to me and that leaves the biggest impression are actually the people who are able to, kind of what you said earlier, just make the eye contact, slow down, where I don't feel like I have to apologize for talking to them. You almost get lost in time together, and then that connection, whether you see them a week or 2 weeks or a month later, it just is so much stronger because that connection wasn't made in the moment of multitasking. It was just two people who paused to see each other.
Right. And even when someone has a device and it really is necessary for something important that they're waiting for, you on the other side, you don't know that. You start to make these assumptions. You know, am I not interesting enough? Do they not care enough for me? So I think you can avoid that by just putting it away or be upfront. Hey, I'm waiting for an important call from my son. If I hear it buzz, I might just take a look at it. So
Mhm.
that then we aren't left wondering or making assumptions or valuing our self-worth.
Hmm. Yeah, and I can't really explain it. It honors the other person in the conversation, which is part of what connection and relationships require, right? But also it changes some, or at least for myself, it's changed something in me and just how I kind of prioritize my life. I noticed lots of good comments happening and people mentioning how they kind of slow down and be fully present. Many stuck out. I saw Colby Sharp had one where he prioritizes just a teeny bit of reading time during his prep period and such. And I just thought, dang, that's a good idea, just to keep the main thing in life. And like I'm in the middle of a book that I'm reading right now, and I can hardly, no, this will sound bad, but I cannot wait to get to it later tonight, long after we're all in bed. I just
That
cannot wait. And then I have another one lined up after that, but
is that
I'm digging a hole here.
science that science fiction series you're trying to turn
It
me on
is.
to?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It is so ridiculously good. I almost have to warn people not to start that series because it's hard to stop. That's how ridiculously good it is. And the books are
Hmm.
so long. Okay. I totally digress. Here's another one for you, Mark. What part of education gets you most excited, and why did you say yes to this incredible work that we do? And then I'm also side curious, has that reason changed or evolved over the years?
I don't think it has changed. I share my story that I was motivated to become an elementary school educator by a fourth grade teacher, John Bernard. As a high schooler, I got to volunteer in his classroom as a service project course. And I just thought he had the most amazing job and was having a lot of fun. So I think to answer your question, has it changed? No, I still think being an elementary educator is an amazing job, and it allows you to have a lot of fun. I think that you have to find the joy and the passion and what excites you to continue this journey. And when you can bring that every day, it just makes things much better. I've said before, I think you've even heard me, that even after 37 years as an educator, I'm just as excited today, maybe even more so, with the opportunities and the connections and the learning. So I got into it because it looked like it was a lot of fun, and I continue because I can bring that joy and that passion.
Right. One of the reasons I wrote the book was this tension or conflict that it feels like we have in education, where whether it's self-imposed or the system, but just the reality that I hear from a lot of people and I experience myself is this overwhelming pressure and prioritization of just one aspect of human development and growth, and that being student achievement. And the intent in saying that isn't to say that that's a bad thing to aspire to, but when it's the only thing, then our kids are missing out on so much. But so are we with what we're called to do. And like you just shared, the reason you got into it, I think if I'm just speculating here, but if people were told this is the main thing and the only thing, and there's no other reason to get into education, is to raise scores, I wonder how many incredibly gifted teachers wouldn't sign up and say yes to this. So I'm just saying, thank goodness that we have an opportunity to bring our passions and our reason we said yes to our job while also helping kids learn at a high level. That was a little
Right.
sidebar.
No, you're right. We've got to focus on meeting the needs of each student, but we've also got to focus on meeting the needs of each adult too.
Hmm.
We want the adults to be happy and feel purposeful so that they're bringing it for the kids.
Hmm. So getting into the autopilot theme a little bit more, and I'd love to hear, the conversation in the comments has been awesome. So here's another question for Mark and for everyone else listening. What's one regular routine that you'd be willing to update if the change was meaningful to you or your students? So said another way, like what is something that you currently do and maybe you feel really good about that you'd actually be willing to update, whether it's to make it more relevant to kids or the people you serve? And the reason I like this question is because we, I think, ask our kids to change every day when they show up at the door, whether it's by learning or kind of having an open mind or being curious. And then I probably feel like I should be doing that and modeling it myself. And that's maybe a harder conversation. So Mark, with that said, what is one routine that either you've recently updated or that you'd be willing to update and change if it were meaningful?
I think it would be to see what is happening in classrooms, make connections with students, sit down by them, watch the instruction. I mean, I think like a lot of administrators or anybody, I always have these great intentions. You know, I'm going to walk around, I'm going to say hi, I'm going to see how things are going, but I need to step it up by entering the space and forgetting about all the other things that we have to do that might be, don't worry about those tasks. Let's focus and attend and be present and make that connection with the student and the class and the instructor. I need to get better at that.
Hmm. And one of the things for as far as this dialogue goes, maybe how I might personally phrase it, it might not be don't worry about the test, but it might be, do your best on that, set students up to do their best to show what they know, but don't have that be the focus and highlight of their learning all year long. Because it really should be about the learning and the relationships and just the deeper, as the book explicitly states, the learning that lasts, and not just that number or designation on a given day that might make us look good or feel good, or a school gets some type of designation or award. So a
Right?
slight nuance there.
I mean, and I think you added another strategy for moving off of autopilot is get to know someone personally, find out their likes, learn
Mm-hmm.
something about them. Because, again, I think that might make you slow down a little bit and listen and pay attention. And you told the story of the student that you were working with, and you discovered he had this passion and this interest for magic that
Hmm.
if you would not have taken the time to talk and have a conversation, you wouldn't have figured that out about him.
Hmm. That's such a great point. And that was one of my autopilot moments where I go in and I feel like I'm kind of good at getting to know kids, but sometimes it's more surface level than I even would want to admit or even be aware of. And it wasn't until, just not to regurgitate the book, but I connected because he had a soccer jersey on and I played soccer. So immediately we had that connection and kind of it stayed there until we broke through and took it a lot deeper. And then the whole day was transformed in just a way that was a powerful reminder that people aren't always how they present initially. I mean, there might be cordial, respectful, but people generally have a lot more to offer, but they don't always just go share their heart and passions and things like that. Sometimes they have to work at it, and sometimes the work just involves time.
Right. And we have to pull it out of them. I mean, how many of
Mm-hmm.
us are a little bit reluctant or hesitant? We don't want to share too much or show off. But
Mm-hmm.
if somebody engages us and talks with us, then they'll learn what we're passionate and interested in.
I think part of it goes back to like what we really care about, so our core priorities. And quite honestly, I'm just again speculating, but I would think that kids could realize if we really care about them as people over the long term and their deeper learning or shallower surface learning that could be kind of measured and just getting them ready for the test day. I have reason to believe that kids can kind of flush that out, and that some kids are going to be less inclined to open up and take things deep and be vulnerable if we're erring on the side of just focusing on achievement. And again, I don't necessarily have evidence to that, but it would make sense. I think kids are often more intuitive than we give them credit for.
Right. Well, I bet you do have the evidence. I bet your evidence is if you think back in your own school career, you can think of those teachers who did that with you and for you, or you saw it modeled. And then you can think about those who were just all about business, all about instruction. So you've got the evidence there if you think back on who made a difference in your life.
Sure. All right. So now I've been kind of toying with this idea for weeks. We're going into my favorite chapter in the book, and it's chapter 7. And before, if anyone's listening who hasn't read the book, don't skip right to chapter 7 because the book is actually written. It's not where you can jump around. You really have to go from the prologue all the way to the finish to the epilogue. But if you've read all along, we can talk about chapter 7 now, and it's Find Your Jelly. And it's my favorite chapter overall for lots of different reasons. I have Jen Lagarde and I have kind of a special Find Your Jelly donut connection because we talk about the theory. And jelly, it just represents like that, what's in you that makes you you. It's that sweet, kind of the magic that you're just excited. And when we get to it and add a little jelly to our work, which we should each day, things just change and are transformed instead of mucking around the crust and some of the obligatory important foundational work that's needed. So Mark, I
Do
am
you
curious
mean the jelly donut? Like, are
that
you talking about the
this
mm,
you're killing
the
me.
raspberry jelly donut? Yeah, this is the jelly.
This is like torture, Mark. I love
Mm,
donuts. My grandfather was actually a baker. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
mhm.
I was about to say best prop and surprise ever until I had to watch you eat the thing. So
Sorry.
now that you have your mouth full, we'll do paybacks. I feel like I could share, Mark, some things that I think are your jelly, but I'm gonna make you own a couple things first. So what are you passionate about? What are you proud of? And what are the things that you notice when you do or when you connect to during the day? Similar to how Colby Sharp is sure to dive into a book every single day. I mean, I would say that's part of his jelly. What's your jelly?
School wise, well, you heard me talk a couple weeks ago at the MESPA
Mm-hmm.
Winter Institute. One of my jellies is I have this soft spot and I have this heart. I talked about being a champion of the underdog. I shared in a in a in a speech the ability to connect with others because I was the underdog myself. So that's one of my jellies. I want to make those personal connections, and I want there to be no barriers for kids. I don't want there to be anything getting in the way. I want to help them feel good about themselves and be successful. So that's one of my jellies. Another jelly is, and some people may look at it differently, but I think being positive, sharing the positive. I mean, our school-wide theme this year, kind, keep it nice daily. I think people forget that there are so many more good things and positive things to share that we forget about that. Whether it's a good news call of the day, recognizing citizens of the month, we've got to share the positive because human nature is if you're given an evaluation, you meet with your supervisor, they give you all of these glowing accolades, but then they say, but you could work on this a little bit more. What are we going to focus on and think about
Mm-hmm.
that negative thing that we perceive? But yeah, so one of my jellies is share the positive and try to get others to do it as well.
And so I'm making all these connections to work that you've done and that you've inspired across the country, like the good news call of the day that you started leading, and now so many people are doing that. So I'm making a connection to your jelly and how that, for whatever love language and passion, has not only made a difference for students in your school, but now we're kind of learning from that too, just by you sharing it. So I have an interactive thing for people again. This is a feel good thing, but I think it's also important. And I'm going to throw a shout out to Tony Sananis. He was on our first week we started the book study, and his superintendent, Christine, bless her, was watching the Facebook Live, and she typed in the comments, what am I supposed to do? Just watch? And Tony and I got a kick out of that, but it had us thinking, like, how can we make this as interactive as possible? So here's another one. And Christine, this is a little bit of a hat tip to you and to Tony Sananis, but I'm going to invite people to tag a friend or a colleague or someone you know in the comments. I think I'm using the right word, tag. Just mention what you see one of their strengths as, and their jelly, if you will. And let's just celebrate one another and kind of do that. And while people are interacting and doing that, I'm going to ask Mark another question. Actually, I want to make a quick connection too. When you talk about being part of your jelly, sticking up for the underdogs, it just reminded me, Mark, at PLC meetings and at school, this is why it's so important that we live our jelly and that we find our jelly and aren't ashamed of it. Because imagine if you're not in a room, then we're just going to have to rely and hope that somebody else has kind of that lens and is sticking up or looking for the underdog. Because I would bet that your radar would go off to barriers or obstacles or for underdogs that I might not notice, if that makes
Right.
any sense at all. And same with if somebody had different jelly who was passionate about something, they're going to be really in tune with that and gifted in that area. And if they're not owning that, or if we're not valuing and acknowledging that, our kids miss out and our school misses out.
No, I think you're right. Yes, I get to use my strength and my experience of being the underdog to pay attention to interactions or systems that work or systems that don't work or communications or lack of opportunity. So yeah, I get to use my experience and I might be paying close attention to that while someone else might be looking at it from their jelly perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. So while people are kind of recognizing their colleagues in the comments, how have you seen and celebrated students' strengths in your school? Whether it's you directly or maybe even noticing and celebrating teachers who are doing that. How do you get to the core of what kids love and what their jelly is?
Well, excuse me, I always need to be better. Um, and we always need to do more. A few things that happened this year at our school, not by me, but I think by staff members, are looking for opportunities to engage and involve kids. I mean, I just saw a community ed class start at our school in the morning for chess players. We have a group of staff members who are passionate about environmental ed, and they started a junior naturalists club, an opportunity for kids who have that interest and experience. I have staff members who, for a few years now, have been the mentors and supporters of Girls on the Run. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that might be one way in which we can honor and tap into student interest by having opportunities for them to participate and join in and learn. I'm excited for next year because um, I'm committing our school to have a, hope I say this right, first Lego League robotics team. Uh, there are kids who are passionate about that and who want to learn and have the skills. So I think as many opportunities for students as we can provide is a way to tap into their passions.
Hmm. You'll have to let me know what time Lego League starts because I might just have to show up for that. I'm also passionate about Legos. We had within the last couple weeks at our school, a couple students wrapped up a really cool project. But months ago, they came to me with an idea. And one thing I love about what our team has cultivated is just this passion-based culture where kids are empowered to go with their ideas, whether or not it's in the curriculum or part of the lesson plan. So sometimes that means kids working over lunch or taking stuff home or just whatever they're passionate about doing it when they're done. But these guys were thinking, it was a student who came to our school from another school years ago, but he knew what it was like to be a new student at our school, and he was reflecting on things he wished he would have received when he came. So he worked with one other co-producer, but several other kids, and they created this film. It was this video tour of our school. And the thing I loved most about it was their personality and leadership and heart that went into it, and the fact that it was all 100% their idea. I mean, they did all the editing. They did some cool special effects where as they were walking the halls, they fast forwarded it. I won't play by play the whole video, but it was just very cool. And you could just sense like our fifth graders in it. It was pure fifth grade. It was awesome. And it's going to serve a real purpose and make a difference for prospective families or families who want to check out our school and maybe can't visit at open house or whatever the case may be. So I just love how there's this culture that teachers, because those kids it's possible they never would have made it to my office, but they have a teacher in this particular case who green lighted it from the way, and we made all the connections. They were flexible with the time to give the kids access to school. And that's just one of a zillion different stories. And I know these things play out in schools across the country, but above and beyond the formal chess clubs and Lego leagues, sometimes just giving time and credence and dedicating some resources to kids who have an idea or something they want to explore, whether it's big or small, can be a really powerful thing. And then lead to a domino effect where other kids get ideas and start to think, hey, my passions matter, my jelly matters. I mean, we can do that here if I have that idea.
Right. I like how you point out it doesn't have to be a formal, structured group or club or opportunity, but just recognizing on individual students' skills and strengths. And it's about saying yes. I've seen other administrators who promote that yes, say yes to staff, say yes to students, because you're giving them permission and you're showing them support for what it is that they're bringing, the ideas they have.
Great. Well, in our minute left, I'll just encourage people. It's been really inspiring to notice people kind of calling out friends and colleagues and just mentioning really cool things that sometimes might go underappreciated. Like one person, Tracy mentioned a person who asked hard questions in a tactful way. I mean, what a gift. How's that donut, by the way, Mark? Good?
Raspberry.
Okay.
Probably not as good as your grandfather's.
Grandpa was good. He was good. Before we go to the Underground Book Club hashtag on Twitter for the after party, I'm going to give you like the final 20 seconds, Mark. Tell us for those who haven't heard, what's the good news call of the day and how could an educator start that? Because I think it's a real jelly celebrating thing. So you get the last time here, Mark. Tell us about the good news call of the day.
Good news call of the day came about after I heard a teacher in a Twitter chat say she made a positive phone call for one of her students every day. I thought, I've got 750 kids. I can certainly find someone worthy of a positive call. So that's what it is. It's finding a student, celebrating them, calling their family, surprise calling, and telling them why you're giving the good news call of the day. And many educators I've added a wrist bracelet, certificates, photos, share it on social media. But one of the things that I do is I'm the person who identifies most of the students because it was something that I saw, experienced, participated in. And how powerful is it when the principal calls a family member and I'm able to describe why I'm calling and why their child.
All right.
So you can start making those calls and join in and follow hashtag Good News Call of the Day on Twitter.
Perfect. And we'll use that as a segue. We're going to hop over again. We call it the after party, and it's just this interactive Twitter chat led by Laquita Outlaw. She is at Dr. Outlaw on Twitter, and Christopher Dodge is at Principal Dodge 1. So they got the first question. It should be coming up really quick on Twitter. I'll see everyone over there. Mark, thank you again for your inspiring and sharing and helping us find our jelly, literally in the case of your donut and figuratively.
Thanks, Brad.
Take
Good.
care.
Bye.